This is a photo that I selected for editing. If we zoom in, there's a little bit of patchiness in the skin and some color grading of the skin that needs to be done. Other than that, the seamless background needs some cleaning, and obviously the photo needs to be cropped properly. So minor adjustments in Lightroom first with setting the black point, cutting back significantly on the sharpening, which is by default set at 40 in Lightroom, and masking that down to 70, and then applying the lens correction and chromatic aberration correction. And from there, we go directly into Photoshop. That's all that's done in Lightroom initially. In Photoshop, we work in layers, and the first layer is a copy of the background layer on which I remove the skin blemishes, the blemishes on the background seamless paper, as well as a little bit of liquefy of the subject, and that's what you see here. I'm not sure that we see a big difference on the screen video. I'll zoom in. So if we come down to, for example, on the floor here, this is the kind of cleaning we've done. And if you look at the ankle on the skin, this is some of the cleaning and some of the liquefy that we've done. Just a little bit there on her face. Then I did a layer just to repair an area on the paper. Then I usually start working on the subject's face with micro dodge and burning, and that's usually done on a check layer or a luminance check layer. So I correct the luminance with the dodge and burning, and that's what you see here for the face. And that's a burn and a dodge layer. And I do the same thing then for the legs and the arms, and that's on this layer here. So again, quite a bit of work here that was done. If you look down at the ankles, dodge and burn is used to smooth out the skin while working on a luminance check layer. And if we put all that together into a skin layer on off, this is what we get. So if you look at the face and the legs, there's quite a big difference, a little bit less in the arms, but this is how we typically clean skin. After that, I brighten the iris a tiny bit, not enough I think for you to see on the video. It's really minor. I hate it when or my style is not to over brighten the irises, just a tiny bit there, and put a little bit more depth in the hair by doing a little dodge and burn, and here you have it here. So basically it's just a dodge layer, but the blend diff options are used in the layer style dialog box, and I removed my dodging from the darker pixels just so that all I get is some highlights appearing. Then I did a rather complex skin color correction, and that's done by creating many layers. So again, I've done the skin on the face separate from the skin on the legs, separate on the skin from the arms. And to do this, the skin actually has to be selected and masked out. So I've created masks for the skin of the leg, a mask for the skin of the arms, and a mask for skin of the face. I think I can probably show you. That's the mask for the legs, that's the mask for the arms, that's the mask for the face. And what this mask applies is three different things. Two gradients, gradient map. One is applied using color blend mode, so the blend mode of that layer is color. One is applied using linear light, and linear light is a special layer blend mode in Photoshop that allows you to use the fill differently than the opacity. With fill, you can vary the projection of that layer on the underlying layer. Unfortunately, I see that I deleted all my swatches, but basically I created a layer with the color swatches from dark area of this original skin, mid-tones, and brighter areas, maybe 5, 6, or more swatches of tan or skin color, and those are applied into one of these gradient maps. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different skin tones applied from the blacks to the whites at their respective level of brightness, and that is applied to only the mask. For example, here to the mask that is the face, and then blended in using color, blended in using linear light, and varying the opacity and fill of those layers. And then I use a complex curve with adjustments of the red, greens, and blues, as well as the RGB. So the RGB does the brightness or the tonality, and the RGB does the hue. So with an RGB curved layer, I was able to correct the skin color for each of the separate areas of the legs, arms, and face differently. And if we collapse all of that down, that comes into this skin color correction layer, and that's right here. So if you see the difference here, I'll zoom in for the legs. So have a look at the tones in the skin itself. You see we go from a pale purple gray to a vibrant yellow gold with some red in it. So from this to that, maybe less visible. So the area where it's the most visible, I think, is on the legs. So from this to this sort of brighter gold color. After that, I do some general dodge and burn, and for example on the face, that's here. So just you can see mostly of the dodging on her cheeks to give a bit more contouring to the face. And if you look at her leg, that is on this layer here. So again, off, on, get a little bit more shape. I did a bit of color correction, I think, on this area here on her foot, and that's that. Then I applied really just a little bit of, it's called Pro Contrast from the Nick collection, and that does almost nothing, just a tiny bit of contrast. And then it applied on two smart objects of stamp visual layers some smart sharpening, and I had to rasterize the smart objects because I was ending up with a file that was greater than 4 gigabytes, and you can't save files bigger than 4 gigabytes on Photoshop. But basically, my smart sharpening is applied by using blend layers, or blend modes. One is darken, one is lighten, and really it's only applied to her eyes in this case here. So just a tiny bit of sharpening of the eyes. I'm sure you can't see this on the video. It's really minor. If you look at the iris, off, on, it's really minor. It's something you would see on the final print up close if you're looking at it up close. Then I take this back into Lightroom, and the reason why I take it back into Lightroom is that I'm editing several images from this particular shoot, and the final white balance and luminance or brightness of the image and tweaking of the overall image of the contrast is done, with all the images side by side, so that it could be more coherent. And that is, and also with crop. So that's the original photo here, and that's the final cropped image after minor adjustment of the contrast, white balance, and so on. And maybe I can actually zoom in here. Lightroom's a little less friendly at zooming in than Photoshop, but this is what we get in terms of the final image